Hello everyone, welcome back to Season 3 of Wency 29's 31 Days of Old. You pretty much all know the drill at this point. I read scary stories on the internet, and you listen to them for your enjoyment. So, today's full story is a creepypasta about South Park. Now, Smashback is known for doing the extreme at times, making crude jokes and all that. If you see the show, you know what I mean. But how far is too far? Well, in this story, we'll get that answer, or at least an answer. So, join me today as we read the story of South Park, Lost Episode. I was shaking off my responsibilities and staying up late in the early Friday morning at 4 a.m. while procrastinating on my college work. All my friends went to bed and I wasn't in the mood to play any video games, so I turned on my TV to see any channels were on. While I was channel surfing to Adult Swim for reruns, my eyes immediately caught on Comedy Central playing the South Park opening sequence. Normally, Comedy Central usually plays an infomercial at that time, but I was too delighted to notice or even care. It was an earlier opening with the banjo player, but during the part where Kenny mumbles his lines, I just realized the quality of the video graphics was poor and unstable, even for South Park standards. It was as if someone recorded via VHS, but little did I know that weirder things were about to happen. Usually, the episode started right after the theme song, where Ike or Mr. Hanky flies into the South Park sign. But this time, static suddenly interrupted and stayed there a bit longer than usual, until the actual episode started playing. The actual episode started without any music at all, and simply showed Kenny walking in the streets of South Park. But it wasn't the classic hopping or skipping walk that the show is famous for, but an actual fully completed walking animation. There was no sound either, and no sign of the other boys or any background characters for that matter. As Kenny silently walked in a loop, like out of the Flintstones. In the loop, classic locations were shown, like John with Seddy's and Stark's Pond. And despite the geolaco editors like showing the school at one part, then the movie theater ad for that, I shrugged it off, believing to be the type of indirect joke Trey and Mac were notorious for. So I decided to continue watching it. After about the 5-minute mark, however, the looping buildings started to mix away at random, and the new buildings began to appear as if on cue, showing locations such as Randy's or Casablanca, although neither of those would appear until later seasons. I didn't know at the time, of course, but in hindsight it was pretty weird and strange. A door opening was suddenly heard in the background, followed by sounds of various people shouting and other shouts of commotion. The audio was too muffled and distorted, so I wasn't able to fully hear what they were saying, but it sounded too realistic to be an act. It sounded like a group of people were yelling at a crying woman to stop. The people were begging her not to do it, as the crying woman warns them to back off or to take them with her. I was confused by this. The screaming and begging grew louder and louder along the way, and during the tassel, the animation itself revealed the background changing into more realistic details. The looping buildings began to deteriorate over time, and it appeared to synchronize with the screaming. First, it sounded signs of neglect, like boarded doors and broken windows, and the next loop shows the structures discoloring away due to AIDS. And it continues to loop in worse conditions than the last as the screaming grew louder and louder and violent all the way until to the point where all the famous landmarks were barely recognizable and were falling apart. But Kenny, for some reason, didn't experience any change at all. And not only that, he continued to walk as if nothing was happening. Both the audio and the animation lasted for another 5 minutes, until which the voices were getting clearer up until the end. Several of the voices I was able to identify and recognize. Trey and Matt. Among with Isaac Hayes, telling the crying woman to think about her husband. Trey Parker and Matt Stone sounded genuinely afraid in their midst. It didn't sound anything like a joke at all. It sounded too genuine for a prank for them. I then heard Isaac telling her, "Please don't do it," before silence came. At this point, the animation froze, as if it was waiting for the woman to answer. Finally, the woman just barely muttered in a whisper, "I'm sorry," before a loud gunshot was heard, followed by a thud. Screams of help emerged, panic yelps for help, and crying was heard before the animation cut to black abruptly. Several minutes of silence has passed until the animation returned to Kenny walking again in a loop, and the background returned to normal as if nothing had happened. Only this time, after a minute or two, Kenny stopped and turned around into the viewer's direction, and walked towards me as the camera grew nearer and nearer, until Kenny was close enough that his hooded face covered the screen. His staring eyes gave me shivers as Kenny continued to simply look at the camera's view, as if he was watching me from my own TV. Never blinking at all, as if he was under some sort of trance. He continued to do this for 4 minutes before the screen cut to black as the credits quietly played. After images of Kenny's eyes layered on in the credits until it finally faded away during the Brainwave Airplane logo, and the screen faded to black until an information started playing as if nothing had happened. I don't know if the events that occurred that night were some kind of sick drug drain mind played for people like me, or something more ominous. Even as I type this right now, I still feel those eyes staring at me with the same haunting chill from before. The death that was heard on the audio was more suicide.